City Sounds. Creating podcasts, creating podcasters.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Gold. This mini-series is a production from the MA Podcasting course at City St George's University. We've been hosting an evening of British Podcast Award Gold winners, and we'll be sharing some of their tips, ideas and inspiration and their thoughts about what the next big thing will be.
%49 of people listen to podcasts while doing chores, 42% while commuting, 21% before they sleep. In those moments, their hands are busy, their eyes occupied, their ears open. This is the magic of podcast. It takes us away from the monotony of scrubbing a pot, from the stressful crawl of a morning commute, or a restless 2 a.m. anxiety spiral.
Release. And release. Keep breathing through your nose and out through your mouth. As you do this, start to feel your mind.
Podcasts are companions. It's like being invited into someone's space without actually being there, and without ever needing to see a face.
Like waves in the ocean, just passing.
But something's changed. Video is stepping into an audio world. Platforms such as Spotify, YouTube and TikTok are pushing video podcasting into the mainstream. And look at how quickly it's growing. It was only 2020 when Spotify introduced video podcasts for a select number of shows. Now it has more than 250,000. So what does the future hold? Is video going to subsume audio-only podcast, or is there room for happy coexistence? And how is this shift transforming podcast? Is intimacy lost when video is added, or is something else gained entirely? I'm Julie, a podcasting student at City St George University. To help us understand how video is reshaping podcasting, my fellow students and I spoke to leading industry figures at PodGold, hosted right here at our university. Matt Deegan, founder of Podcast Discovery, has been closely observing these trends.
I think the biggest challenge is video. What's the place for video in what was an audio-only platform? I think particularly younger audiences, driven by YouTube, expect visual. That's not to mean they're watching it like television. It might be in a tab or another screen. But how do podcasters, particularly ones that aren't just some people chatting around a microphone, cope with the visual future? In the last year, my mind has changed a little bit about whether it's the future. I'm sort of all in on it now. I think if you're making a show, I won't say a podcast, if you're making a show, your job is to try and get an audience and the right audience. I think if you start making decisions that limit that to maybe just being audio only or being on certain platforms, you're stopping people being able to discover it. So like if your job is there to get your media out to people, you've got to be where they are, and that's partly the video platforms.
Matt Deegan's insight highlights a generational shift. Younger audiences expect video as well as audio. This is backed up by Edison's Gen Z podcast listener report, indicating that 84% of Gen Z podcast listeners have consumed podcasts with a video component in 2023. So how are practitioners introducing video into their audio content? We hear various routes. Andy Wood, the Traitors podcast director, favors slow intervention to avoid disrupting the relaxed, conversational nature of the show.
I like to use podcast-style mics, and I like to use robotic cameras. So it totally feels like it's just you making a podcast as it would be normally. There's not lots of TV or camera operators. There's not people putting lapel mics on people. you're just sitting down on a sofa or a chair to have a conversation that could be just audio. It just happens to be that we film it quite slickly as well.
Hannah Moore from The Guardian explains how they are looking into adding video to their popular podcast, Today in Focus.
We're trying to work out how to do video in a way that kind of brings value. You know, we don't just want to film a presenter and a guest in a studio, which works for a lot of podcasts, but we want to think about how to visualize quite complex news stories. And I think what we're good at is really breaking complex news stories down, things that people think, oh God, I should know about that, but I haven't really been paying attention.
The approach taken by The Guardian here shows how traditional newsrooms view video to enhance rather than replace audio. Instead of simply following the trend, they see it as a valuable tool for providing deeper insights.
So there's lots of different ways you can approach a video if you're a podcaster. So
Matt Diggin again.
you've got to think about the consumer and what they want. So some people would like every episode visualized. Sometimes it's just useful for social media. And so getting the right clips or concentrating on recording certain things so video can work. It can work as a trailer in some of those environments. I guess the challenge is if someone wants to consume you in video form and then finds out you're no longer doing it, does that mean they're less likely to consume? Or have you hooked them and that they don't mind seeing an audiogram playing episode 4?
Success lies in engaging with your audience where they are, especially as technology keeps moving forward. But is it really about the audience? One counter-argument suggests that the shift to video in podcasting is a result of a titanic clash between major tech platforms. In other words, these platforms are redefining what a podcast is in order to grow their market share. One thing is clear: Spotify, Anchor, and YouTube, they've made it easier than ever to integrate video into podcasting. But the real game changer has been short-form platforms such as TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts.
4 or 5 years ago, everyone was doing long-form podcasts on YouTube. They're filming the entire show. But now social media is more used for the short, visualized 30-second trailer clips or promo clips, and maybe they've got to have some graphics on them as well.
Short clips are no longer just an afterthought. They're a critical marketing tool. In fact, a media report from 2024 indicates that 46% of older Gen Z rely on social media for podcast recommendation.
It's also quite hard to edit long-form video alongside doing audio. It's audio, you might just be cutting bits of the audio, but on the video version, you've got 3 or 4 camera angles to cut between as well.
Handywood's right. Editing video is more complex than audio, especially with multiple camera angles. But the payoff can be huge. Increased reach, a stronger connection with younger audiences, and better discoverability. Arguably podcast's biggest challenge.
It's a really brilliant way of marketing your podcast for free if you do it on video. It is not essential, and there are, of course, still so many amazing podcasts that do it with just audio.
That was Bella Neal, head of production of the Eden 20%. And maybe she provides our key takeaway. Video isn't essential for every podcast. But when it's used strategically, it can amplify reach and deepen engagement. This strategic approach is also emphasized by Ellie Clifford, head of content at Persephonica. She explains that their focus is on drawing in the audience and that their video content is not always an exact replica of the audio.
We don't necessarily think that it has to be a carbon copy for the podcast to the visual medium, because you're not always getting the same audience. And so I think it's important that you don't just record a load of audio and whack it out as a video. And similarly, I don't think it's right that you record a load of video and just rip the audio off and put it up as a podcast. I think you need to think about them as their different mediums. You want to make sure that you're getting the story out there and your guests are getting a good time and being represented properly. But I think you can think about them as 2 different products. And so if there are slight adjustments, then that's okay.
That balance is key. Video doesn't have to overshadow audio. It can uplift and support. Now, we've heard lots of arguments for video, but what about the flip side? Does audio still have a role to play? Andy Wood again.
Yeah, hugely. I think back to that Traitors Uncloaked. The audio podcast, in fact, was longer than the video podcast. So it was a bonus part of it. It was things you wouldn't have heard, things that might not have suited being visualised.
And Hannah Moore.
I hope that video isn't the big thing because I love audio personally. I want video to be complementary to what we're doing and to add something of value. Like I say, not just be filming two people recording a podcast. But like, there's no doubt that that helps clips to share.
So where does this leave us? Audio is timeless, irreplaceable for its intimacy and simplicity. But video? That's how you turn heads, how you grab attention. The future of podcasting may not be about picking sides, but about balance. As with anything in life. Here's a possible approach. Catch the visuals at home, maybe while scrubbing that pan. And when you're on the move, switch back to audio. Because let's face it, have you tried holding your phone on a busy city street? Good luck holding on to it. My phone. This podcast was produced by me, Julie Beguin, and Jackie Imas.
This has been a production from the MA Podcasting course at City St George's University.